Today is Good Friday. And I know, like me, sometimes people ask, why is it called Good Friday? Because isn't today the day when we remember that Jesus died on the cross? Well, yes, it is. And it might seem a little odd that we call it Good Friday, but often when we understand what good really means, we often think of it as a kind of superficial, kind of surface thing where it's like, well, that's good and that's bad. To recognise where love and where goodness is in the midst of tragedy and in the midst of things that are going really, really badly wrong is a really hard thing to do. And yet, in the story we hear today, we see the goodness of God and the love of Christ intertwined with all those moments and images that we have of Jesus' suffering in the last moments of his life. Today we're going to have a little look and a little think about the Stations of the Cross as well, because again, a lot of people, you might see the images on the side of your church around the wall. They're often ones with Jesus carrying the cross, or with people being angry or mean, or with those images of pain. And yet, intertwined in all of that is the love that we can show, the goodness that we can find, and the goodness that we can be in the face of suffering. If you get a chance to go to church today, there's a chance you might have an ability to do the Stations of the Cross, a special prayer tradition that has come out throughout the church where we follow those moments, the last moments of Jesus' life. In the traditional Stations of the Cross, there are 14 stations. Not all of them are actually in the Bible, but the tradition has developed over time to try and help us make sense of those last moments of Jesus' life. And there's a few stations I'd like to pick out today because I think they talk to us about how we can make sense of what's happening in the world right now. One of the most incredible things about our faith is the fact that Jesus felt pain and Jesus went through hard times. Jesus gets it. And when we see struggles and suffering and we see people who are in need, that was Jesus. That is Jesus. And we can relate and connect and understand those situations in a whole different way. One of the most beautiful things, if you look at the Stations of the Cross, are the moments where he meets people. I mean, Jesus, whenever he meets someone, it's a big deal because there's always a change, always a transformation, always a lesson for us to learn. But Jesus meets a few key people. And in Station 4, Jesus meets his mother. In the scriptures, his mother is at the foot of the cross, usually at the end of the story. But in the traditional Station of the Cross, Jesus meets his mother, and it's often seen as the moment of tenderness and compassion amidst those kind of really stark and scary first parts of the story where Jesus is condemned to death and takes up his cross. It's a reminder that no matter how bad things get, sometimes all we need is the love of someone who cares for us. Right now, can you think of someone who just needs a hug, who just needs that kind of warm embrace that Jesus' mother would have given him? That's a huge thing to think about, that actually we can pierce right through any situation with a simple act of love. Session 5, when we meet Simon of Cyrene, and we hear about this in Mark's Gospel. Now, he's a really interesting character because the famous image that we see is Simon carrying the cross with Jesus, helping someone carry their burdens. And of course, that's absolutely what we're called to do at the moment. You know, things are difficult. The cost of living is rising. People are struggling to pay their bills. People are struggling to understand what's happening. And we are called to be there with people, to be generous, compassionate, kind, to share their load. But what's really interesting is that we forget that Simon didn't volunteer for this initially. He was pulled out of the crowd against his will. And yet, even though he didn't sign up for it, in that moment he realised that his service made a difference. All of us will be put in situations we didn't expect. We'll find ourselves facing something we didn't see coming. And when we're in that moment, we have the same choice as Simon. How do we serve? How do we bring love to that moment? And think about it. Think about it right now. What's going on for you that you didn't expect? An unexpected challenge or situation or difficulty in a relationship. How in that moment can you make the choice of Simon to bring support and comfort? Because that's exactly what Simon did, and gave Jesus in that moment an example of the love that he'd often so given to other people. The other person that Jesus meets is a girl called Veronica. Again, now Veronica doesn't get into the scripture, she's not in the Bible. But in the story, when she wipes his face with a cloth, his image is presented on the cloth, and she has an image of Christ on the shroud that she uses. Her name, actually, Veronica, comes from Veritas, an icon, like true image, patron saint of photographers. She's very, very cool. But actually what she shows us is that when you show acts of compassion, you become the face of Christ. Someone very wise once said to me, the only Jesus some people will ever meet will be you. And whilst that's a terrifying thought to think about, that actually we have the job of being Christ to other people, it's also an amazing privilege and opportunity. We can be Christ to other people. Through our interaction of love and compassion, people will see the face of Christ. That is massive. And that's what we're called to do. So today, when you go through and hear the Passion story, maybe if you pray the Stations of the Cross, on Good Friday, think about where the good is in that story. And think about the good you can be in the story of our world today. Because that's what we're called to take from today. That's what we're called to understand. That Jesus' sacrifice enables us to feel and to be present and to be kind of blessed with that love, but also then to give that love to other people through our own actions of compassion and mercy.